Hello, everyone, and welcome to the E3, which is the Expert Epic Entrepreneurs. Say it 3 times fast. We're all here today. We put together these motivational Mondays, coming up with great topics that we can all share with each other, and all decided that we gained so much from it that we love having people interject and offer input. But we're going to have a great blab because we just like blabbing with each other too, and so learning from each other, which we've done so much of throughout the course of this journey that we've been on. So anyway, we have 5 generations of women, and we have representation from the 20-year-old group, 30, 40, 50, and 60. So if you know anyone who's 70 or who wants to be in their teens, we welcome the other ends of the spectrum to bring on too. So, but love the energy that this has created for all of us. And so Dottie's for the 60s, and I'm in the 50s, and Jen is in the 30s. Or did I do that backwards, right? I always get you two confused, isn't it? True? That's right. And then Yasmin's 40s, and then 20s is Stephanie.
I'll take the 30s, no problem.
Yeah, I want to.
I'll be happy to mix up.
Hey, Yasmin, you got any light there? I'd like to even see you better.
I know. I'm trying to see what the light is like. It's a little dark in Denver today.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're all here today, and we got Jen on who's on audio only right now. She's in the tanning bed while we're doing it.
I know. I can try to go get a different light to kind of
great.
Yeah. Hold on.
So, but what we're going to talk today
I'm
about?
Trying to get more.
Did you get it?
Every single light on.
Yeah, your light. Yeah.
If I get more light, then you got that back there. So that's you want me to
Is that worse?
look at that?
Oh, it's all good. We'll just continue.
I'm so sorry, guys.
It's a work in progress here. So anyway, this that we're doing today actually came from my son, who's 23. He's in a leadership group, and he shares stuff all the time. And it was my week to kind of decide the topic. He shared this with me probably just 3 or 4 days ago. So I went out and got the book right away. You guys are just read. It's backwards to me.
Give and take.
No, it's right.
No, that's upside down.
That's right.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. I mean, this book was actually written. I mean, it's not brand new, but it's still it's still relatively new. Adam Grant, and he's done some other stuff too, by the way, which is sort of fascinating, which I found out after I delved into it and found some of his stuff. But it's basically why helping others drives our success, and it talks about in the book. And I know you guys, I sent you through a little article about it. But it talks about the fact that we are either we're all right times, but predominantly you're usually in a category of either being a giver, a taker, or a matcher. And so the discussion we're going to talk about today are sort of the upsides and the downsides to different things in terms of how that all fits for us. But I will tell you, when I first picked it, when David first shared it with me, I sort of struggled with it at first until I got through it a little bit, because I thought it was going to say, you guys, I don't know, did anybody get to see, Dottie, I know you probably did, the results of how they kind of categorize those that are really successful and where they fall into those categories. So, and we'll just use this as our start point, but it was saying that generally those people that are givers are not normally, if you look at just any profession across the board, they're usually not as successful as the people who are matchers and takers. And that, I thought, well, that seems disturbingly wrong. So it kind of bothered me. And then if you read on just a little bit more, you find out that the givers are also the ones that excel the most. So they sort of sandwich in between. You have the givers that, and this is what we'll talk about, is why giving all the time is not necessarily where you want to be, but that having a giving heart and coming from a place of giving is definitely where you want to be. And so it talks about why some people are very successful as a giver and why some people are maybe not quite as successful as a giver. And so that's sort of our start point. But I guess when you guys saw those, I don't know how for me, the way that I received it was sort of like the givers are at the bottom. And I'm like, well, that's, that's backwards, right? That can't be right. And if that's what it is, you know, I don't care. I'm going to continue being a giver because that's how I'm wired, right? Yeah. So I don't know. What were your thoughts, Dottie? I know you had some comments earlier about it, but just what was your thoughts as you were reading through that?
Well, it was interesting when I first read that. I was like, oh my goodness. And then what was interesting in reading that the givers were on the top and on the bottom, I was trying to wrap my head around why. And kind of as things go, I'm in the middle of reading Rising Strongly by Brene Brown, which I just love her work. And it's right at this part. And it made me realize, I think I got a distinction on it from something that she's writing about, and that is the givers who are on top know specifically how to draw very good boundaries. And the givers on the bottom don't succeed as much because they don't know how to, you know, draw good. I'm talking about healthy boundaries. And so her question that we're at in the book, Rising Strongly, is not to sort of mess it up with two things, but I think it is very pertinent, is the fact that she was going around asking questions because she was like, I just don't think that everybody's always doing the best they can. And she had this judgment around. I mean, you know, she's just so real and authentic when she shares these things. So she would find her friends that thought the same thing. They were like, yeah. But as she began to have all these interviews about it, as she looked back, she went, oh my goodness. The people who answered yes, that they really believe that people are doing the best they can with the tools they've got at any one moment, were the people who were her wholehearted people. And the people who just didn't believe that, no, they're not going to, they said in judgment, they had a lot of resentments. And even when they gave not just for the pureness of giving. And they often didn't have good boundaries. So because they didn't have good boundaries, they often ended up with resentments. And I thought, bingo, that's it. You know, I don't know. I had this epiphany, an aha moment as I was reading those and then thinking about this article. But that's just sort of my feedback on it.
Yeah, I think that's, and I was feedback. Can you guys hear the feedback? I don't know why that started all of a sudden.
Yeah, now.
I'm gonna, since sometimes it comes and goes, so I'll maybe it's a little bit less now. Anyway, I had a friend of mine who started a group, an organization, and he had poured his heart into it, but he gave, and then one day, all of a sudden, you called him, and it's like, nope, not doing it. Nope, not going to cut it. I'm not going to work with him. You know, and it was like a complete flip, and I think it's because he got so burnt out and felt used ultimately because he didn't have those boundaries. Like everybody was calling him for everything, right? And everybody just like, oh, just call Steve, he'll do it. You know, let's get that kind of relationship with everybody. Well, then he didn't have those boundaries, and eventually he got burnt out to the point that he flipped completely the other way, and that was the whole organization fell apart then because people were like, well, you know, I got involved with this because he was a certain way. He's not, he's not a giver anymore, and he just wants something back all the time, So it really is a balancing. So, but Yasmin, I don't know, did you get a chance to really delve into it at all? And
I did a bit, but I can tell you just from experience, I certainly can resemble all of those comments, as you say, because I certainly would know myself to be a giver, and I love to be a part of projects and contribute and be of service. And I also know in times when I've gotten burned out, when I didn't have boundaries. So through my journey of personal development, it's really about speaking those boundaries, recognizing, again, we talked about earlier about bringing things into our awareness, right? Like not knowing I didn't know that I wasn't, setting those boundaries and wondering why I was burnt out, and then just not want to participate. So it can go from one extreme to the other. As I've grown and evolved, I definitely have learned to express those boundaries and be confident that those boundaries are okay. Because oftentimes we think that we just have to keep giving, otherwise we wouldn't be seen as like a giver, there would be a taker, and there's some guilt around that, I think. But honestly, really, there's other areas that we have to give. For example, in our family life, to our spouses or partners, right? We have to give, so it's going to come from someplace else. And I know Jen and I were talking about that during a piece that she and I did together about really looking at what does balance look like. And I think that kind of comes into play for that, because if we are going to be givers, but we get to the point where we don't give to ourselves, like the self-love that we were talking about in the past, that's, that I think is a big critical piece. When do we give to ourselves and feel okay and not feel guilty about it, right? And be able to receive. So another way of saying take is to be able to receive, right? So I just want to bring that element into it. Take any judgment around what receiving looks like. And I'm sorry I look like a ghost, like I'm trying to put lighting. I know how cool it is. It's like, it looks like I'm in a horror, like a scary horror film, just lighting my face up on one side. I don't know how to, I've got it all lit up, and for some reason I still look dark. Anyway, I just wanted to share that about taking. Another way of saying it might be to receive, and that might be a great conversation as well, particularly for women who we're just wired to be such givers and to be of service and to be that support role, and to give to ourselves and to receive is such a critical part of our development. Some people do it naturally, and some people really struggle with receiving. So, I would just wanted to share that aspect for our conversation.
So, it's funny because I do think that women probably are more wired to be givers, because it seems to me, I think some of this giving thing might be for, and I don't want to just paint a broad stroke of the brush here, but I do think that our nature lends itself to that a little bit more. And so, we might even have to set different boundaries than maybe men do even at times. So, but Jen, what were your thoughts?
So it was interesting as I was learning about these categories of the giver, the taker personality, and then the matcher personality. It was interesting because I could see all of these different people that I've done business with over the course of my career starting to show themselves in my memories as I was reading this, and I was reading about the different personality types, and I 100% am in agreement that it really comes down to in reflecting about success and those who are reaching their success, what the article is talking about. I thought it was fascinating that the extremes of the giver personality will either work for you or completely work against you. And I think that is something that it takes self-awareness, and this is something that we've talked about in the past, is that it's like you have to do the self-assessment to ask yourself, if I relate to the giver, what part of me is wanting to give so much? Where is that coming from? Is it coming from wanting to just be a people pleaser because my self-worth is wrapped up in how these other people are going to think about me? Or is it coming from a space of, no, like I know where I stand. I know where my limits are. These are my boundaries. But like I do want to give because that's my natural state of being. But I need to know where to stop because I don't want to burn out. Then also too of being able to, I like using the word receive versus take, because take kind of like has a little bit of that like stealing, like I'm going to take this from you. But I do believe that, like, again, it's like that self-awareness. If I naturally am open to receiving, that's a beautiful thing. I think that, like, majority of us need to learn more how to receive in life, but again, it comes down to the self-awareness of the extremes. Am I wanting to receive because I'm coming from a place of scarcity, and I'm coming from a place of wanting and lack of that, like, I need to take from other people so that I can get ahead, like that dog eat dog kind of mentality, which, it kind of like, I think of like Wolf of Wall Street, 1980s, like style, like super like hardcore, like taking where like, it got them to a certain point, and then of course it blew up and it all fell apart. Like unfortunately it's just not sustainable. And then the matcher, I think that that's really a cool personality type. If you naturally can connect the dots of like how to match different resources together and what can happen. However, though, the extreme of that is that if all you're doing is matching people, like how the heck are you going to be able to move forward yourself? Of like knowing, what do I have to offer? What do I have to give? And so, Cheryl, go ahead. I can say.
I was just going to say, I think in some ways the matcher, if you're always in that space, and my first marriage, not my one now is not, but my first marriage was very much a matcher type of relationship. It was always tit for tat. You do this for me, I'll do this for you. And so it was almost like a business relationship instead of a marriage, if you will, because, that should come from a loving place. And one of the things that was talked about in that article too was just the fact that if you are a true giver and you do come from the right place, it's not a selfless place where you're, because you just want approval all the time, but you're doing it from the right place. The downside is that you, with some people who might be more in that taker and not even a receiver, because I think you're right, a receiver is like in the middle would be a great place to be. If you're a giver and a receiver, I think that's beautiful. That's probably the harmony that you create with it. But if you are somebody who's a giver and you're with somebody who's a taker, learning to become a matcher with that person a little bit more so that you help to set that boundary so that you could still have a relationship with them, but it's more of a matching relationship so that you don't become the only one that's really giving to the relationship. So I thought that was sort of a way of looking at it too, along the lines of what you were sharing as well. So
I love that, Cheryl. I think that's great because of just being able to, again, come back to that awareness of just understanding who are you working with and is it working? Do you feel good? Do you feel empowered? Do you feel that like when you give that the person's actually receiving and that there will be an energy exchange in some way, shape, or form? Will there be a monetary exchange? Or there'll be like a barter? Will there be some sort of matching that is happening? Like, I mean, I know for me, one example where I had to walk away because I think all of us have congregated together because Cheryl, you had put this in our group Skype messaging, is that we all seem to be natural givers. And I know for me, like, that's definitely my natural state of being. Like, I want to give as much as I can. But there came a point where, I, like, for example, with my public speaking, I would go and give presentations and there would be like all of a sudden, like, for example, like a nonprofit would come up to me, and not to judge that this is not every nonprofit in any way, shape, or form, but a particular nonprofit would come up to me and say, oh my gosh, like, we need you, like, this would be great. And I'm going to ask you to do it for free because, we're a nonprofit and we don't have any funding for this. And just the way that came across, I was like, I am so sorry, but I had to put up the boundary of being like, I'm sorry, if you approached me and was just honest with me about, you know what, we're in a financial situation, is there something that we can work out? If you approached me in that regard, I would have been able to talk to you about a matching that we could come to certain grounds. The fact that you just came at me with, you want to take this from me, and that I'm not going to, I can only go so far with service, like it's not that I don't want to be of service, but I want to know that the service is going to be received in a way that feels in integrity with what it is that I'm giving. And so I thought that was it was interesting. I was reading this article, like the taking, like that was like one example where I was like, as a giver, and I would have been more than happy to do waive my fee, but because how it felt was that this person was just going to take from me, I had to say no. That's not. I cannot. I can't say yes to that, unfortunately. So that was just an example I wanted to throw out there. In the real world,
somebody could have done, like, said, hey, we really don't have the funds for it, but guess we can absolutely promote you in our newsletters. We can share it out with. I mean, we could put you on our website. Right. It doesn't always. Sometimes there's more value in other things anyway, right? Than just the getting the paycheck, if you will. So I think right, and you felt the energy, and the energy is very important to be in tune with, which I know we all are. And Dottie and I've definitely had experiences where I could be totally wrong on this, and I've not read the whole book, by the way, because I've only had it a few days, but I have delved into it, and it's fascinating. I sort of feel like anybody who's truly a taker, I don't think most people fall into that category. I think most people are going to be matchers. But I know that I worked for someone who was truly a taker. Didn't seem like it on surface, but I really think at the end of the day, and there's such a small portion of the population, but I think that's maybe what a sociopath is. Everything is about them. Everything they do is very calculated. It's manipulated. You may think that they're giving, but at the end of the day, they're really not. And I know Dottie and I talked about this some in the past, Dottie, in terms of some of our past experiences, But I don't think there's a lot of those people out there, so we don't want to get too hung up on that. But certainly you have to be aware of that. Would you not agree, Dottie? That
Yes. And I think, too, we have to look at when we say that women are natural givers. I always think to myself, is that nature or nurture? You know what I'm saying? Are we actually really born with a give gene, or does it become a self-fulfilling prophecy? I mean, that could be a whole other research project. But I will say, Jen, to your point, Brene was giving this example. I thought this was fascinating. Brene Brown gives a third of her talks a year at no cost because she has things she believes in and all. But it was kind of like you had, sorry, somebody, I'm like, decline. So she had a situation where somebody really got the thing that she has to be self-aware about. And that was that they came to her and said, now that you're so big, I'm sure you're not going to forget the people who supported you before you got big, are you? So she went, oh man, they tapped right into my, Texas, don't you get too big, you smarty pants, you know what I'm saying? Don't get too big for your britches once you get big time, And so she accepted reluctantly to do this. And she went, and oh my God, the story she told about then they threw her in a room with somebody. I mean, the whole thing was so hysterical. And then her self-awareness around all of these things, which led to this statement of, do you think people are really doing the best they can? And she was like, no, they're not. I know when somebody's not doing the best they can. And it just, led to more research and more sharing, more authentic, beingness with her. But that was just, I think sometimes the worst thing somebody can say is, you think you've gotten too big for your pants here, and who do you think you are? And that really taps in culturally, I think, to women, taps into them because we're not supposed to be doing that. And I know that I grew up in a wonderfully giving family, but I look back and I realize that, I don't remember them really knowing how to receive. And I don't think that I really did either. And I had to learn that, to accept something and just to say thank you. I mean, you'd go to dinner and they'd fight over pants, But what I came to realize is there's so much control in that type of giving. And if you're always in the giving, if I'm always in the giving, somebody has to receive in order for me to give. And if I'm always in the giving, I'm in the controlling situation. And that's not a good thing. So when Robbie and I took a year-long journey, I really had to learn how to receive, and it was an amazing, humbling kind of experience, and just different things I've gone through now where I had to learn to receive. And it's been a great thing, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was thinking about what you just said too, Dottie, about, you're right, it's probably somewhat our nurture. It's sort of this, what we're subjected to, right? And we're kind of cast into that role. It's kind of like, just the perception I think that we get even when we're young about how girls are supposed to be. And I keep thinking of that commercial where it says they show all the, like, how does a girl throw a ball? How does a girl run? Do you remember that commercial they did? And
that is my favorite pieces I think I've ever seen. It was so eye-opening.
It was very eye-opening, right? So I think, but this maybe falls sort of into that same, there's sort of these expectations that get set about what girls, or how we're supposed to be. So it does come maybe more from that. Not that we have a giver gene, but maybe we do. I don't know. But so I think that is an interesting way of.
Carol, there was a thing I posted recently on Facebook. It was sort of around that, but it was a different take because she says back to the boy, well, if you really work hard, you will be able to beat me and throw like a girl or something like that. It's sort of like reversed it, but it is interesting.
So in the article, it talked about sort of the three, I don't know, kind of, I don't want to say, I'm not really sure. I guess the pitfalls that givers can fall into, and we've sort of hit on one, which is, but also it can be like what you were talking about, Jen, that you're just doing it because you want something, you need that approval, which is never obviously a good thing to do. And but you also, if you're not doing it from the right place, you can also get this sort of like wheeler dealer kind of attitude. Like you're always wheeling and dealing with people. You're always, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that if you're just given all the time, like people, they come to you, but you're always trying to like wheel and deal them into something else. And I think you think you do it for the sake of saying, I'm trying to help you. But the truth is that you're just pushing it back out there. And I don't know that I was the only thing I was thinking about with that, and I'm not sure that doesn't fit any of us here, and I know that. But this made me think, and this is really a side tangent, and I don't want to get too lost on it, but just that when I do research online anymore, because he was talking about the social media aspect, I think you probably saw that, Dottie. And there's like pluses and minuses in social media because we can obviously communicate, but you can destroy somebody's reputation online. So when you look up something, you know, and you see a couple negative posts about it, you know, it's like the word scam. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but like companies go out and get around the word scam, even if they're going to promote it because they know that's what people will look up, right? Mm-hmm. So there's all this push out there towards that. And I think that we just have to be aware that, you know, if you're doing anything at all, people are going to be watching you, number one. But a lot of people do that because they want to sell you something else. And so
it's a common tactic for somebody to make a video and say something about being a scam, and the real issue is that it's not, or it's theirs, or they send you somewhere else. And it's just a tactic that I don't like.
It happens way more than I realized, because when you start really digging into things, and you see these people who you think they're just being generous, right? Giving you, and at the end of the day, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think that's a giver, that's a taker, right? That's somebody who's trying to act like they're going to give you this really great information. They're going to help you because they don't want to see you, you know, spend your money or do something that's going to waste your time. But then at the very end, it's like, but come look at it. But if you really want to make money, or if you really want to see a great program, come check out mine. And so I sort of just wanted to bring that out because I feel like I have run into that so much lately. And I know, Dottie, you've probably seen it repeatedly out there. And, you know, so I think coming from that place of authenticity, like Brene Brown talks about, is so important. So I don't know, Jasmine, is that something that you've seen or
well, I do. I think that some people feel like ultimately they'll be manipulated or be taken advantage of. And so they kind of want to ensure that the person is coming from a genuine, authentic, giving place to really want to help. I mean, particularly, let's call it like in the space of what we're doing, to coach and to mentor. And certainly people have things they want to offer as, again, the matching, like if people want to, for example, hire a coach, or any of those things, it makes sense. It's a matching of resources, right? That they're valuing, like I value what my mentor shared with me or what my coach, so I'm going to exchange or pay, or, you know, some even energy of exchange, as it's called, right? Mm-hmm. But then when people feel, you know, manipulated over time, I think that's where the resentment builds up. And going back to the people pleaser, because I'm sure, you know, I can resemble to that, especially younger in my life. It was definitely one of those things, and it's something that I struggle with, and an automatic as well. And I know for myself, I have to look for myself. Am I coming from people pleasing, or am I coming from genuine? Here's my genuine opportunity to give, and a recognition that there's value there, and vice versa with whoever I'm working with or playing with or listening, you know, as their mentorship or whatnot. Is there a genuineness of there to give and receive? For example, we're giving and receiving right now. You guys are sharing. I'm really listening to what you're saying. I'm receiving. I'm hearing what you're saying, right? And then I would love to give as well. So that's just a nice energy flow. But over time, not in this situation per se, but in other business situations, there are times where I felt like I was being taken advantage of because I wanted to give. Then there's a point like, wait a second, am I being acknowledged for it? So then I want to go the other way, as you had mentioned. So over time, it's really bringing that awareness to ourselves so that we are not doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? That we can actually bring that awareness forward, like, no, I'm not going to come from people pleasing. I'm genuinely coming from, I want to give, and then this is how much I can give, and it's the boundaries. And it's just an example from my own life, you know, truly, because I do have that side. And of course, another aspect of it is that approval aspect, right? This is why we want to give, right? Is part of it is that we want the approval of the other person, or like you'd said. So those are aspects that serve us, but they don't serve us. So it's having that awareness of, are we operating from fear, or are we operating from love or true giving? And that's where we really want to look from, right? And it's so true. It's like, where are you operating from?
Yasmin, oh my gosh, this is so awesome, because I was literally just like, as you were talking, I'm like, this is so synchronistic. Yesterday, I did this huge reflection about like my entire life and all the different areas of my life, and I was really looking at, like, the big theme that came up was this reflection of low vibration operations and high vibration operations, and what is the difference, and how do you stay in the high vibe? And it's like, it was like straight up law of attraction of, if I am feeling in any way, shape, or form fear, guilt, shame, like all of those feelings that are honestly, they're just very low vibration experience, then it's like, okay, like I gotta sit down, I gotta like revamp, because the reality is that what I've seen in some businesses and in some online situations, and like you can spot them a mile away, because as soon as they start using fear tactics, it's like, all right, like that's coming in at a low vibe, and that's going to go straight into taking, because as soon as you are playing on somebody's fears, it's like, you're not in like a space of true giving, in my opinion. So this is completely biased, but like, this is where I stand on it, is that if I'm using fear tactics, you know, like that's a form of manipulation, of preying on somebody's fear to get them to like do something for you. And in a lot of times business cases, it's to give you money. Now, granted, if you can shift and be able to get into a place of love, acceptance, joy, patience, you know, that's so much more high vibrational. And if you can operate a business from there, of that, you can honor the fear. You can say like, yep, here's this problem, here's this challenge. But from like coming from a loving space of true giving, it's not with the tactic of using the fear against somebody. It's to actually empower people to take action in their own lives, to empower people to know that they have the power within themselves to live their best lives, to do what they need to do, and empower them to partner with you to move forward, not take from them, but to partner. And that is like where it can be a giving back and forth. And so the reality is, it comes down to is like, what vibration do we want to operate from? What vibration do we want to live from? What vibration do we want to build our businesses from? I believe in like where we are in the present moment, we are moving into the high vibe business mentality. And I want to see it grow more and more and more, because I'm inspired by each and every one of you ladies, because you operate from this space in your business. You know, this is where I want to operate for my business. I never want it to be a place of fear, shame, or guilt. Like, we spent enough time in that space, you know, growing up as human beings. Like, we don't need to be there anymore. We know better now. So, like, you know, I'm all about, like, us holding each other accountable to be like, you know what, let's, like, the fears are still going to come up, but when they come up, let's, like, look at them, let's shine some light on it, and let's go back to love, patience, acceptance, and, like, true giving of service. So that's me and my soapbox from yesterday.
It all comes from a place of an invitation. You know what I mean? An invitation. Like, if I were to invite you to a party, I'm not attached, right? It's an invitation. Please come to, you know, my birthday party or whatever it is. Genuine invitation. So when it's an invitation to step into something, not from fear, but because they are touched, moved, and inspired, to get beyond, yes, there might be a fear there. Like in coaching, we deal with people's fears all the time. But to recognize that where we're operating, for example, from as coaches or mentors or consultants, again, I'm speaking for my own life, but we all have a service or a product or something that we know can help be a solution to a problem, right? Or we know that it's going to be something that maybe people have a fear or concern around, but not to prey upon it, but to offer it as a solution. And they're touched in such a way that they want to take action in their life not because of manipulation, but because they see the possibility that it is going to help their lives. You know what I mean? It's a true invitation, not a manipulation. That's one thing I think. And that people take, I love what you said, Jen, about empower, because they feel empowered or touched, moved, and inspired by, and that's going to give the action. A very different vibration or energy than preying on someone's fear.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is that I never want to be a person that has to tear somebody else down or make somebody else wrong to lift myself up or make myself right. And I think that this group is all about that. It's not about, you know, if somebody is doing something and it's working for them, yay. I mean, we should be celebrating what's working for them, not telling them why that's not good, come do what we do, right? Because we want to work with people in the highest vibration possible. And I think that's what this group is absolutely about. And, you know, but you know why it is. I mean, and I say this as sincere as I can. The reason this group operates that way is because Dottie started it, and guess where Dottie operates, right? So if somebody was on this team that wasn't from that space, they would find us, and I think I put this in there, they would find us to be exhausting to be around, right? Because
Like attracts like.
What's that?
Like attracts like.
Yeah, like attracts like. And so Dottie operates always from that place. And so, you know, she's attracted. So we've all come together in this really synergistic way because we felt the good energy that each of us was able to share and, you know, with each other as we moved forward with this whole project. And the more that time we spent together, the better that we realized it was. But again, the commons are not the person who starts it, right? It's always the leader. And, you know, since Dottie's the leader of starting this whole concept around the E3 group, I mean, it's no wonder that that's what we're attracting. And if Stephanie were here, which she's not today, she's exactly the same way. And so, you know, I know that that's the kind of individuals that will want to be participating with us as well. And so, yay to Dottie. And Dottie, what do you have to say for yourself?
What do you have to say for yourself?
So I was like, well, thank you. You know, it's taken me a long time through the years. In my 60 now, I should have learned it by now, huh? But I think that my mom, I guess, for instance, I would say, you know, bless her heart, if you said, Mary Lou, that's a beautiful dress, she said, oh, this whole thing, I got it for $5. Now she did, but she always looked like, because she loves getting a deal. But just the ability to say thank you. So that's what I say is thank you. That means a lot to me. And I wanted to acknowledge Jody over here who said, I love it. She said she's a reformed people pleaser. Yahoo! So are all of us probably.
I know, right? Oprah, I think, said that about herself, you know, and then over time, it's like, you're like, wait, that doesn't serve me. You know, and when you get the confidence and you get the skill set, you get the awareness, you know, it doesn't serve you. I mean, yes, you want to give. Yes, you want to make people happy, but being a people pleaser, definitely reformed people pleaser comes in and out there. You know, and when we go that survival mode or that automatic, I can tell you authentically, if it's not gone, I'm like fighting myself with it, right? But at the same time, I'm like, wait, where am I operating from, right? And I think we're all at that level of being aware, or at least being contributed to be aware, you know, and even holding each other even accountable. And that level, lovingly, of course, and that level of, okay, so here's what we're giving, here's what we're offering, here's what we want to provide, but definitely from a place of power and contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a couple of things I found. That's great, Yasmin. And, you know, it makes me remember that I realized that if I started saying something about, oh, no, this whole thing or whatever, that I was literally like stomping on their gift because they're a gift. And that's like, yuck. And then the other thing I realized is that I train people how to treat me. You know, and if I don't like how they're treating me, I have to look first to myself. I have to go, why did I train them that way? And of course, we know retraining or untraining or whatever is much more difficult than training somebody from the beginning to know that I love giving, but I also have boundaries, you know, and those kind of things. So I do think it goes back into what we see emulated, you know, growing up. You know, what do you often see? You see all the women jumping up from the table to help do the dishes while the guys go in and watch football. I mean, you know, and so, but I see that changing a lot in families where, you know, the guys realize, wow, somebody just cooked the meal for me. If the female did, and sometimes it's the guy cooking the meal, or it might be two women. Like in my case, we're like, hey, somebody's cooking, somebody's got to clean up. It's not like there's roles. And I think sometimes the more we realize that, what if we just do what we're best at? And that works really well in families as well. And I see more of that. Like if the guy is not the best with keeping up with the money and writing the checks or, whatever, I mean, one person may have just a better skill set with that.
Well, Bob and I are definitely in a role reversal. And last night he cooked dinner and cleaned up the dishes.
Send him out.
Yay.
It's like he's well enough now. Send him out to Washington.
I'm so happy he's doing much better, Cheryl, by the way. That's awesome. That's awesome that he can do that, right? I mean, that's really fantastic.
Absolutely. He's, after what we've been through with him having a little bit of a scare that way. But
yeah.
I will say this in my first marriage, and this will be a real transparent thing, but, I didn't do a good job of setting boundaries. And it got to the point where I felt totally used and burnt out and taken advantage of. But I allowed it. And that's the responsibility that I had to take for it. The challenge was, and it wasn't the right relationship, but the challenge is that after some time of sort of realizing that and kind of getting my strength built up in terms of who I was and working through it, all the things that used to be okay, all of a sudden, it almost sort of flipped, kind of like that extreme thing. So now it's like, and, in fairness to my ex, he couldn't breathe the right way without it being wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like it would just, and it really wasn't fair because I didn't say anything, shoved everything under a rug, and then one day pulled the rug out from under him. So that's not good either. So I think setting those boundaries and really doing that. Now, it wouldn't have been the right relationship for me anyway. I know that, but how I worked through that, was not the best way either. And I can be really honest about that. And I think a lot of times we do that because we don't know how to set those boundaries for ourselves. So it's so important. But once you learn how to do it, you understand that it's so healty to live your life that way, right?
I would like to add in about how boundary setting is a skill that we have to learn how to do. And from my experience, I could be wrong. It could just be like who I was attracting in my life and what was going on. But the majority of people that I've come into contact with, they didn't. It's one of those things where your family kind of has to teach you, what boundaries are as you're growing up, and then as you, if your family doesn't know what boundaries are, and there's a lot of crossover that happens, and it's like, how could you know how to set boundaries, right? It's like, it just is generational. Like it goes all the way back since like the beginning of time, right? But as we are, becoming the adults that we are growing into and growing into our best selves, boundaries are something that we can completely learn and relearn and how to do, what they are, what it means for us. And I just want to take a moment to highly recommend everybody who's tuning in and watching this to, continue to do research on what boundaries are and define what boundaries mean for you. And that was one of the most empowering things that ever could have happened in my life, because I realized I'm wow, my family had no idea. And the thing that was awesome was that as I was learning about boundaries, then all of a sudden my family started to learn about boundaries. And the next thing you know, we were having a great time together all of a sudden, when we used to be having all this tension and we didn't know why. Well, it was because we didn't know what boundaries were. So
it's so brilliant.
Right? It's it's amazing, and it's such a beautiful thing. And I'm a boundary cheerleader. I think that they're great, of understanding them both ways, right? Is that what is the difference between a boundary and a wall, right? That's another aspect of you don't want to be shutting people out. But you do want to know where your boundary is to where you never feel taken advantage of.
You made a great point about, I think what I was hearing you say is you started creating boundaries, other people started shifting. And there was this amazing book that I read years ago, and I use it kind of as the book for couples I would work with. It's called Undefended Love. Amazing book in my own life, with my relationship with Robbie early on. And what I hear people say lots of times is, well, my relationship can't change because I can't get them into coaching or into therapy or into whatever. And I go, oh, wow. You know what? You got to really take a look at that, because here's how it works. When we change our dance step, people automatically have to do something or they're not going to be in the dance. So when we change our dance step, we open up a whole new space into which people can move. And that is incredible. And I've applied that over and over and over in my life. And it's just so amazing. And along with that, being unattached to the specific outcome and the allowing that creates. And sometimes, in some family situations, it might be a decade or something before there's a shift. But if you've drawn proper boundaries, then you can essentially just simply stay in the space of connection with them without the commingling and the things that happen when we really mess up our boundaries, and just allow for them that space to continue to do whatever they need to do. And then just one day you find out, wow, it's so different because you were able to maintain the boundary, not a wall, but a good boundary. And it's a great insight, Jen.
Yeah.
Was that book? What was the book? Undefended Love.
Undefended Love, because most of us, myself included, we learn that we come from a defensive posture. And I'll just give you a quick example. I mean, early on in my relationship, I move out here and I think, oh, this is great. And then all of a sudden, all this nitpicking started. And I was like, oh, my God, I'm living back, in my growing up. And so, but I thought that more information was needed, So I was trying to give more information because I thought there was a lack of understanding. Well, that came across as defensive because I was giving information. So I read this book, and I swear just tears came down my face one night. I was reading, Robbie was asleep. I was like, I'm not going to bother, But I just started applying it. And so every time she would pick about something, I would say, thank you for sharing. Well, it didn't take even 2 weeks. She came to me and she said, I don't know why I just pick about things sometimes that are really not very important. And she said, I feel like I've just been picking. And I just said, well, thank you for recognizing that. And then I told her what I had been doing. And she was like, oh, my goodness. She said it was like so what happened was, in a nutshell, it allowed her the awareness to kind of catch her own behavior. And, and we've used that time and time again. I've used that, in my own life with other people. And I can tell when I'm going down that defensive path, nothing good happens. Like, and then the idea is for me not to judge myself, but become aware of it. And Brene Brown calls this the rumbling of the story. And she says the most important things take place in the rumbling, because if we avoid that rumbling and that work and try to put it off or not be aware of it, but in being aware of it, I don't have to judge myself. I'm just go, wow, what was beneath that defensiveness or that anger? Okay, shame, guilt, not feeling okay, who I am is not enough, all those basic things that I have come to learn that all of us have if we'll only admit it and own it. So I own it, because the other opposite of that is a perfectionism, which is nothing more than delusional thinking. I mean, it's not real. Nobody has a perfect life, a perfect relationship. That doesn't mean it's not great. Great does not equal perfect. And so I grew up in a perfectionist home, though, or at least feeling that way. I felt that way. So it's very interesting. And so, Jen, when you're talking about coming into being an adult, I'm thinking about I'm coming into being a senior. Oh, no, I guess I already am. I get mad when I realize I forgot to get my senior discount at the movies. I'm like, darn it, I could have gotten a discount. But, the things you're saying, Jen, are so true no matter what age we are. I would love to tell you that it'll all just one day be packaged in this little box, but no. But that's what's exciting. The opposite of that is to not be here.
Yeah.
But it's like going from good to great, which is a great entrepreneurial book, by the way, instead of going from good to perfection, right? As we talk about in the past of strive for excellence, not perfection. And some of these are great tools, whether we use it in business or in our personal life. Boundaries, going back to that as a parent, that's pretty much what parenting is. And I'm, striking because you see this cute little thing, right? You're like, they can't be manipulating me. They're too cute. But sure enough, right? They learn young, and then you got to retrain it, right? And then when we're all grown up and as, coaches, we're trying to retrain ourselves and work with clients to, rebuild those into more empowering beliefs instead of limiting beliefs, and really looking at another point I wanted to touch upon what you said, Dottie, about really looking at gratitude. Because when you were talking about thank you and just really, I think giving and receiving of gratitude or acknowledgement is something also in the giving and receiving of what builds in relationship with clients, with our spouses, with our kids, of just really being able to acknowledge, like when you're like, thank you, instead of going to the defensive, for all these things you guys were sharing, like, oh, what a great point. What a great point. And really the crux of it, I think that makes so many relationships work, whether it's professional or personal, is showing that gratitude or that acknowledgement and being able to receive. Like, when Cheryl just acknowledged you earlier, Dottie, in our blab about really thanking you for what you've done, and truly, and you graciously received it. And that's a give and receive, a give and take, if you will, of an example. And that's just energy right there. And that's just words, but it was so heartfelt, and it was so heartfelt in both directions. So I just wanted to share that acknowledgement and gratitude also can absolutely fall within the realm of the giving and taking, or giving and receiving.
I love the receiving. And I will tell you, and going back to what I was sort of sharing a little bit about my ex, I know that I created a taker because I didn't have boundaries. I built the taker, and then I resented it. And then no boundaries. And then I had a wall, and I'm like, now, okay, see if you can climb this wall. And it was so high at that point, it was impossible. Right. So I think sometimes we have to look at, have we created the takers sometimes, because, everything that, that's how it evolved out. So in fairness to him, it wasn't fair to him, I guess is what I'm saying, is that piece of it. I do own that. And not to repeat it, but that's how we learn and grow. And then we learn to set those boundaries. But I think Dottie talked about training, and I'm, sort of a strange word. I love Jen's receiving word, but training, but to some extent we do train people to a degree about how we feel we deserve to be treated. So I think that's a very fair way of looking at it. But I really think we need to write this author and tell him that there's receivers and not just takers.
Yeah. No, really, I think it's
so much nicer, right? Because I don't really. Taker has a negative sort of, but there are takers. I'm not saying there's not, but I think there should be this in between where you can receive something graciously, like a compliment. And I'll never forget when I was in high school, there was this girl, and this stuck with me my whole life. She was gorgeous. Like, she was the prettiest girl in our whole high school, right? We're out one day at the mall, and there's a whole group of us, and some guy just walked up to her and said, I think you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And if somebody had done that, not that they would have, but I'm just saying, if somebody had given me that kind of a compliment, I think I would have had no clue how to respond to that. But she just looked at me, she goes, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it always stuck with me because of how she really allowed what he said to be received in a really great way. And it made him feel good, and he said it in a very respectful way, so it was okay. But I think that's so true. And I think we're so good. Oh, this really, do you like my hair? I don't know. Oh, I got this sweater, really, I didn't know if we're not sometimes as gracious as we need to be. And I think that from her really early on, it's just nice to receive that. Don't always do it, but I saw that happen firsthand when I was very, very young. It was very powerful.
It is powerful. And being gracious too, we're all speakers. And I do train people how to be, at times I've trained people how to public speak. And as speakers, people who are new to speaking, when people applaud you, there's actually a receiving that needs to occur when the audience is applauding you. And oftentimes maybe people just want to run off the stage. I've literally had to train people. I had to be trained And then I paid it forward to train others to graciously receive the audiences, whether it's a standing ovation or an applause. It's just like that same thing of saying thank you. Like when Dottie went, thank you. It's really like giving the opportunity to receive, right? Because you just maybe gave this killer talk, right? Or taught somebody. So you're giving, and then that receiving is like, thank you, whether you're just acknowledging it versus like going like this, right? So it's the same as the hair or the shoe or the compliment. When as public speakers, if people are out there who are listening, who want to speak, that is a very powerful thing, because you don't want to rip off your audience, giving back to you, sharing and acknowledging you for what you've just given. So I want to share that, tying it back around to, I know we're all speakers as well. So
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just have two final thoughts that this kind of brought up is that I think that everybody's just making all of these amazing points. And the two thoughts that come to mind is I'm finally now understanding what if you give an inch, they'll take a yard actually means. Now is that like, I'm like, oh, it's a lack of boundary. Like, I've heard that my entire life, and I don't know why it was hard for me to understand. And I think that maybe it's just because of like when you're on the extreme of the giving side, you can't comprehend ever like taking a yard if somebody's giving an inch, if that makes sense. But like, it's true. It's like if a person is naturally wanting to receive from you or take from you, if you give out anything, like they're just going to keep going until you say no. So it's our responsibility to know where the inch ends. And that's like the way that I would describe the boundary is that it's like, if you give an inch, like know where the inch ends and then say, okay, that's enough. Like you get the inch, that's it. Right. And so the other aspect that I wanted to bring up, the second thought, was that, another synchronicity is that I've been having a lot of conversations lately about how other people treat us is actually how we treat ourselves. So it's actually just, if we can look at them as a mirror, as just being like, okay, so if somebody is treating me in a way that doesn't feel good, okay, well, what part of me believes that I should be treated that way? And when I started just realizing that, it was amazing the shifts that started to happen, because then I could finally do something about it. I could finally see like, okay, well, that I'm being treated this way because of something inside of me. If I shift what's inside of me, then I can know where my boundary is, communicate that boundary. And the thing that was amazing was that when you first start using boundaries, it's very scary. Because you're like, oh my gosh, like recovering people right here, like, oh my gosh, like they're never gonna like love me ever again, But as soon as it was like, oh, here's the inch, like every single person responded with, oh, okay. Like what's next? It was not even a big deal, and it was like it was all because of like what was going on inside of me. And so, full circle back around where this conversation started was that, this article brought up a lot of reflections about the importance of self-awareness, understanding where are we. If we're a natural giver, where is that giving coming from? If we're a natural taker, where is that coming from? If we're a natural matcher, where is that coming from? And what feels in alignment with who we are and what feels in alignment with our best life.
Awesome.
Great. So, Dottie, anything because I know we're coming up, we're actually at the hour. Is there anything, just final thought that you had? Or?
Well, I was just thinking, Jen, as you said that, one of the things in Undefended Love is she gives this example of broken toe. And, let's say I have a broken toe and you don't know it. And you stumble into my broken toe and I go, ouch, I have a reaction rather than a response. And then lots of times when people find your broken toe, they go, stomp, 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 stomp. How hard can I stomp on your broken toe, And the other thing I've realized is that whatever is triggered inside of me is not about them. And because, in other words, I can only heal what needs healing, okay? And so I'm not going to get triggered by something in an area that I'm healed in. So when I get, triggered, then I need to look at that person and go, blow them a kiss. Thank you. You just gave me the mirror of what needs healing in me, because wow, I didn't recognize it before I got triggered. Now I got triggered, I've got to be self-aware and go, what's going on with that piece? And we have a tendency to do the blame, like they made me so mad, and boy, did they get, and it's kind of like, wow, I have to look at why they got my goat so bad if that happens. And that's a real opportunity for me to be self-aware and self-reflect and just be grateful for the mirror, because now I can heal that. And maybe the next time something like that happens, because this got triggered in me, maybe I don't go down that path again.
It is a gift, isn't it?
I always remember what people were saying, if you don't want somebody to get your goat, don't tell them where it's tied.
I love it. Oh,
and on that note, I appreciate all of you. And I always feel like, just even the lead into coming up with the topics and the homework that we do each time leading into this. And I hate to even call it work, because it really becomes such a wonderful gift that I think we all get as we lead into these labs each Monday. But I will say, I do think this is a really great book. Undefined Love is one I'll definitely. And what's the one you're reading of Brene Brown right now, Dottie?
Rising Strong.
Rising Strong. Okay, because I obviously read some of her stuff, but that's one I have not. So, I don't know I'm not sure who's leading next time, but I know it'll be an amazing topic. Yasmin, your turn. Okay.
Yeah, we're going 60s, 50s, 40s.
Okay.
Did someone have a book real quick on boundaries in particular? Jen, did you have a recommendation on actual book on boundaries?
I really love this book. It's called Life Puzzle, or Building Your Life Puzzle, is I think was what it's called. I'll look it up, and then I'll see if I can find it. It honestly, one of the that it honestly was written years and years and years ago, and it still just holds true today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great resource.
I'm looking for it right now to see if I can find it, and I will definitely let you know when I do, because it's back.
And the Rising Strong is so much about the boundaries too. It's a real work in process. For doing that, and I've got several that I continue as well. But yeah, I'd love to know that one, Jen. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's just great.
So, well, thank you again, all of you, and have a wonderful week. And I know we'll all be talking probably in between, but I'll look forward to next week, Yasmin, with your wonderful topic that we can all share again. And again, we're the E3 Expert Epic Entrepreneurs, and with 5 generations here to share each week on Mondays, on Motivational Monday. So everyone take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.